Welcome to Tuesday Taiki Talk. I'm laughing because, as usual, I've had technical difficulties, but we're getting started. This is recorded instead of live as it normally is because we're just rolling with it and seeing what happened. I'm on my iPad because I'm so excited to have Julia Toothacre here that I'm like, I'm going to make this work somehow. In some way. And thank you, Julia, for being so patient.
Of course, I completely understand having technical difficulties. So I think all we can do is just roll with it when it happens.
That's all I can do. And guys, there may be a lot of laughter because we've just been through it. So let's get started. Julia is a career coach and strategist who equips who equips ambitious professionals to strategize and take action to control and advance their careers. With over a decade of experience in career development, teaching, and coaching, Julia has helped thousands of professionals find clarity in their career path and support them in their career exploration, management, and investment. As an experienced career coach with a counseling focused master degree and multiple certifications, Julia uses her knowledge to create clear and action oriented career content. Julia is an honest and direct coach, and I know about that. That's not part of her bio, but it's an honest and direct coach, and her content reflect these traits. Born and raised in Southern California, the company name Ride the Tide Collective is a nod to her California roots, combined with an ebb and flow. About that today. It takes that requires us to ride the tide as we move through transitions. Welcome, Julia.
Thanks, Lauren. I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you. I am so glad that you're here. As I said before, when we talked earlier, there was also a lot of laughter. So deal with it.
I feel like it's good energy, especially for this topic, because this topic can get really serious really quickly. So
exactly. Exactly. It's just like, oh yeah, I probably should say what the topic is. The topic is changing jobs and careers with Julia Toothacre. That's the topic. But it's really just changing jobs and careers. And I know some of you are like, Lauren, you're a career change coach. Why do you have Julia on here? And it's because I think it's so important that people have different perspectives, that people hear from different people. I have a different perspective than Julia. But anyway, the more knowledge, the better. And, I'm a big believer in I'm not dulling my shine by showcasing her or spotlighting her, whatever. I'm not good at metaphors or what. I think that's a metaphor. Yeah. Whatever. So anyway, Julia, welcome again.
Thanks.
So why don't you tell us a little bit about the do's and don'ts that you've run into and that you advise your clients and other people about changing jobs and careers?
Yeah. So I wanted to actually make the distinction first around changing careers versus changing jobs.
That's a good start.
Yeah, I feel like they sometimes get lumped together because people just interchange language, but truly they are two different processes with some similarities, but also a lot of differences. So when we're talking about changing careers, we're talking about essentially changing your career path. So you're on one path, let's say you're an accountant, and then you decide, oh, I want to do human resources. That's a career change, like a legitimate career change. There are going to be skills that transfer over always, regardless of the changes that you're making. But that's a much, I would say, longer, a little more complicated process to make a switch like that. It's not going to happen in a couple of months. There's going to, unless you have a connection or something like that. But that's a much different process. Changing jobs is you are advancing in your career, or you're trying to get out of a situation. So maybe you're making a lateral move, or you just want something different, but it's in the basically same area, job, function, family that you've been in. So it's not going to require as much transition and work in a lot of ways as a career change will. So I wanted to make that distinction first, because I feel like it's so important to understand.
Yes. I think a lot of people, they're like, it's the same thing. Like, no, it's not. It's career versus job. And a job doesn't necessarily have to be part of your career. Now, yeah. So take us through your process for let's start with career change.
So I think the process for both actually starts in the same place. And it's what I call understanding the realistic reality of your situation. So whether it's a career change or it's a job change or job transition, you have to understand what's going on right now in your situation. Why do you want to make this transition? And part of the reason for that is because sometimes we make snap decisions based on a single thing that happened to us that's very frustrating. And so we're like, I'm out. I don't want to do this anymore. You go get a new job.
I've done that a couple of times.
No, I've done it too. You get a new job and then you're like, why is this horrible too? What is going on? Well, it's because you didn't take a step back and really look at the landscape of what was going on. Right. So that's a process in my own process, which I call control your career. That is the first step. And so we are asking really hard questions around what is going on in your career right now that you love, and what are you like, what's not working, and something that worked for you 5 years ago might not be working for you now. And that's okay. We have to identify what that is. And that's especially important in a career shift, in a full career shift, because there can be a lot of regret that happens if you're not fully prepared for what that new job function is going to be. So that's one of the places that I start. And I will tell you, the one thing that I try to talk people through as best as possible is especially if you've been in a toxic situation or you believe it's a toxic situation, I will make my clients talk through those situations and I will ask them really hard questions. So a lot of times is this something that you could have prevented? Did somebody actually do something to you? Do you have not necessarily proof, but can you walk me through what happened? And are you interpreting a situation a certain way? Or is somebody really, truly out to get you, mean, all of that?
Yes.
Because a lot of times we're in our own heads, we're in our own worlds, and we might take something in a way that if somebody from the outside was looking at it, they'd be like, they're just saying this to you. There's nothing wrong with that. Right. And so I like to make sure that we're on an even playing field of you understand exactly what is happening in that situation. You understand why you want to move and make a transition. And it's not this snap thing that you've just decided to do.
Yeah. The why is so important, because it's like, are you moving because you had a bad day, or is it a bad job? Is it the job? Or is it the company? Like, why is it that you want to make the change? This is, like you said, it shouldn't be a snap judgment. It should be a considered one.
Right. And personality too, right? Is your manager really horrible? Or do you just not have compatible personalities? Maybe you approach things a different way. That doesn't mean either one of you is wrong. It just means that neither of you is taking a step back to go, hey, we want the same end goal. We're just approaching it a different way. Right. Not everybody's a good people manager. So sometimes you have to recognize that as an employee. And this isn't like a victim shaming situation. If you are in a legitimately toxic situation, then you need to get out immediately. You need to report that. That is a given. But I would say for a lot of people, that's not actually the case. And so we just want to make sure that, we understand what is going on there.
Yeah. And don't always listen to your friends, because they may bike you up regardless. Like, yeah, they should have said your hair looked nice. It's like, well, someone's like, "Oh, did you get a haircut? It looks nice." It could be harassment if it's part of a habit or if it's something that happens all the time, or it could just be a
Yeah.
compliment.
Right. Right.
So it's good to
Exactly.
get a objective third person who's not personally invested. Um,
Yes.
and like you said, sometimes it is what it is. That's why it's important to evaluate objectively as
Right.
possible what's going
Absolutely.
on. And I love that what you were
Yeah.
saying about the manager thing because people talk about like managing up, and it seems like
Hmm.
it's really, I hate that phrase, but it's more like personality management, I think, because it's kind of the
Yeah.
same thing whether you're doing laterally or up or whatever. But yeah, so
Yeah.
I love that.
Yes. The next thing, and I kind of touched on this already, but knowing what is missing and what you need.
Hmm.
And I think sometimes this is the hardest to figure out if you are in a state of overwhelm or if you are burnt out, you're in a toxic situation. A lot of times our emotions are so heightened that we have no idea what we need or want. And we think we want one thing, but we're needing that thing in this heightened state that we're in versus
Yeah.
kind of the norm of who we are. And so I think not to, like talk about coaches or anything, because I don't think everybody needs a coach, but this is actually where a coach becomes really helpful if you are in a really heightened emotional state when it comes to making a career transition, because we can kind of help get you like leveled and back to, is this because of this situation going on right now? Or
Right.
is this something that you've been this way for a long time? So I think that's really important. I think doing any kind of values exercise where you're evaluating, what is most important to you right now in this season, because that
Hmm.
will change. Anytime you have a
Yep.
big change in your life, then you have to reevaluate your values because they will shift and they will change. And sometimes what worked 2-3 years ago doesn't work for you now. And you have to understand that and then adjust accordingly.
Yeah, and it's okay that you started out, maybe money was your number one value. It's like, I want financial independence, but now you're like, I did that. I just want to spend more time with my friends, family, hobbies, or whatever. So I
Mm-hmm.
think that's another thing for people to kind of, it's not so much they understand that their values have changed or that something has changed, but it's accepting it. It's like, it's
Mm-hmm.
okay. That's do you want to be the same person at 23 as you are at 43? And like, are you? You're not. So oh, which actually brings up a question that I didn't tell you I was going to ask you.
That's okay.
Are there what would you say to people in different, like if someone who is in the beginning of their careers and say, you know what, this is a this isn't working for me. I want to change my job, as compared to someone who's been in the field for 15, 20 years. Is there a difference in the kind of advice you give them?
Ooh, that's such a good question.
I know.
Um, I yes and no. I think when you are early in your career, it's easier to move around more frequently. Because I think people expect that a little bit more, especially now. I would say if you are under the age of 30, I'm just going to use kind of an arbitrary number, but if you're under the age of 30, I think that's your time to explore and, change jobs every few years if you're not getting the growth that you want as an employee, because
Mm,
some places don't have it, and you're going to
yeah.
top out. And so I think that's probably more what I would say for a younger crowd. For older crowd, I think it becomes more about stability. When you're in your mid-career and the back half of your career, it becomes more about like, I don't want to search for a job again. Like, I want to be somewhere for a while. It doesn't mean you can't make changes. I think it's absolutely fine to make a change, but it might be every 5 years
Hmm.
or every 7 years, because again, you top out, you get bored, so I probably wouldn't switch as frequently once you get into that like mid-career space. But also, I don't think there's a hard and fast rule for that. I think a lot of it has to do with your personality, with your interests and just who you are as a person. Because I know there are some personalities where they want to do something new every couple of years. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but that does come with limitations for certain employers that want to see some longevity. So you just like, it doesn't, you can do whatever you want, but you have to understand that there's going to be a consequence, quote unquote, or a result that is maybe different than what you were wanting because you switched around. But a lot of that comes with how you tell your career story as well.
Exactly. I love careers. I love narratives. I'm a big reader. So,
well, and I think, I mean, this is a little off, but even for when you're switching careers, I think it's so important to have a really solid career narrative. So like, who are you? What are you doing? What are your aspirations? Like, people need to understand what makes you you. And I feel like, especially if you're coming out of a hard situation, you almost lose that in yourself because maybe you've been in an environment where they haven't celebrated you, right? Or you've been criticized a lot. And then it becomes really hard to create that narrative. But it's a really good exercise to help build, you know, your confidence and remember who you are as a professional, even if you have one person that has been putting you down for a long time. You know, it doesn't mean that that's true of you all the time. So I think that career narrative piece is really important as well.
so how do you build yourself up if you've been knocked down a bunch at your job?
Oh, another very good question, Laura.
I am full of them.
I think this is actually, again, where a coach comes in. And I'm not one, again, I say this because I don't like people to feel pressured to get a coach. I don't think everybody needs one. But I think this is where it's really helpful because you have somebody who is an outside party who does not know you, who's going to look at your career experience objectively and lift you up. So one of the ways that I've done that, and I don't do like full resume reviews anymore, unless like if you're a coaching client, I will do it. But I've used the resume and LinkedIn, like whatever I see on LinkedIn, to help build my clients up. Because a lot of times they look at their experience and go, oh, it's just a thing I did. It's a thing I did, because they have a negative connotation with a lot of their experiences. Whereas I look at it as an outsider and go, you worked for this company? That is so cool. Wait, you did this type of job? What? Like, you need to talk about that more. That is so interesting. Not everybody has done that. And so I think when you, and I'm not, you know, I'm not saying that in a disingenuous way. I'm legitimately like, that is a really neat career path.
Yeah.
And yeah, they need to understand that it is unique in some way. And then once they start figuring out what they've done, I would say probably 95% of the time, they've done these really great things in their career and they just don't articulate it. They don't know how to articulate it or talk about it, or because of how they were treated, it gets really pushed down as either a negative or they're not being celebrated for it. So they don't know.
Exactly. It's really tough. I feel like that's one of the things that I'm going to say 98.726% of my clients we have to work on is like, what did you, it says multi-million dollars. How many is that? They're like 53 million. Like, okay, yes, that is multiple.
Yeah.
Two is also multiple.
Yeah. Oh my God. Can we just talk about budgeting for like as an example? People who run budgets. First of all, that is a skill and not everybody is good at it. Most companies do not have good processes around it, or there are gaping holes and then you have to come up with your own process. But if you're running a multi-million-dollar budget, even if you're, you know, 100,000 plus, really any budget, to be honest, because I've run small budgets and I've done a lot with a little.
Yes.
Being able to talk about that is huge. But in the grand scheme of your job, you think, oh, it's just budgeting. Everybody has to do budgeting. No, not true. Not everybody has to do budgeting. And it's such a skill that people are looking for.
Yes.
You want to capitalize on it and talk about it.
Yeah, and the other thing I always have to remind people, especially now, it seems like a lot of places are looking for those soft skills because you can teach someone whatever. You can there's various things you can do to teach someone the hard skills, but it's really the soft skills, which is where I most of my clients are women, and they kind of downplay those things. I'm like, no, 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 no. This is so important. We have to play this up. This is great. Um, so like, don't ever discount. I say that, but we all do it. But if someone else says it's amazing, believe them, and tell
Mm-hmm.
yourself to.
Mm-hmm.
So is there anything else any advice or stories or anything else you'd like to leave our audience with before I get to my fun question?
Okay, so my last thing that I wrote down, I actually took notes because I wanted to be okay, the other one is recognizing that everything looks good when you are in crisis. So, and I would actually argue that even when you're not in crisis, but you're ready to transition, everything looks like a good opportunity because you're just ready to go. And, we talked about values, and I think along with values, understanding what you want in a company culture, understanding what you want in the work that you do, the type of manager that you want or work best with. I think having an understanding of that is so important so that you can ask those questions during interviews or informational interviews, but recognizing that you're going to be in this state of, oh, this sounds so great. Oh my gosh, I don't have that now. Oh, this looks amazing. Oh my gosh, this person was so nice. Of course, everybody was nice and everything looked good because you're in the interview process and they are trying to sell you on the position just as
Yeah.
much as you're trying to sell yourself. So sometimes you get in there and then, the veil falls and you're like, oh, this isn't as great as I thought it was going to be. And you told me this, but it's really like this. I've had people where they've signed on to something, they've interviewed with their manager, and within 6 months, the manager leaves
Oh
and they
yeah.
knew that they were going to leave. Right. And so now that person is in, a state of chaos and crisis because they signed on to work with that person.
Yeah.
Right. And now they got transferred to a new person and they don't mesh really well. Right. And so these are very real things that happen to people. And obviously, that's a situation that you don't know is going to happen. But in that type of situation, it's okay to leave.
Hmm.
It's okay to go, do the best that you can, see if you can manage in it. But if you were sold something that is not true when you get into it, do your best, see if you can manage it. But if it is truly like the opposite, then it's okay to leave. But go into it knowing they are selling you something, and you have to be really wary of that. And always ask about examples. If they're saying, oh, we do this, we do that, can you be more specific about that? What does that
Hmm.
actually look like on a day-to-day basis? How does that play out? Asking those types of questions forces them to give you a true example versus a hypothetical situation.
I just made up an analogy, based on what you just said. Think of it as like mealtime. Is it mealtime? Meaning it's just something's happened, it's time to make a change, it's just that season, or are you hungry? And when you're hungry, everything on the menu looks great. And you're like, I'm
Yep.
eating now. I'm gonna order everything. And then you get what you ordered, and you're like, oh, maybe not. Maybe not a good option. That's my impromptu analogy.
Okay, I will add on to that to say
Oh,
when you're hungry, like everything that you are trying to do with nutrition goes out the window. Right. So you're like, oh, I want to eat this. I want to eat that. I want to eat that. And you don't even care how you're going to feel afterwards. And then you eat. And then an hour later, you're like, oh man, that was not a good choice.
very good. Yeah, there we go. Look at us analogizing. Yeah, that's a word. I've heard it before. Maybe it's for myself, but whatever. So the fun question, I always like to end with a fun question. I have another question, but this is the fun question. What movie, and I'm gonna add TV show, is your favorite one that involves some kind of career change or job change?
Okay. I researched this because I was like, I know I'm forgetting something, because what came to my head first is, if you watch Hallmark movies
I don't
ever,
know.
okay. So when I had cable TV, we haven't had that in years, but I would watch, the Hallmark movies like Christmas time, whatever. And
Yeah,
I would
I'm
say
aware of them.
half of them at least involve somebody, usually the woman, in a high power job who basically burns out and moves
In
to
a
a
big
small
city.
town
Yes.
and like completely changes her entire life. So I thought about that. I couldn't think of an actual, like a specific movie, but I thought about that just as something that happens because I think it romanticizes that, which
Mm,
is to me is not good.
yeah.
Because those are two wildly different lives that person was in and is moving to, and that will not always work out well. I think what's good about movies like that in that storyline is it gets you to think about your career and do you feel that way, and maybe you do need a change. I don't know that I would make a drastic change. So
Yes.
that was the first thing that came to mind. But then when I was like researching and really thinking about it, I wanted to choose Devil Wears Prada, but I felt like that was obvious.
Did she
So
change jobs?
well, yeah, at the end, spoiler
Oh,
alert.
yeah, she went. Oh, yeah, but she went to Boston, and he was like, "I'm not going to Boston."
Yeah, she changes jobs, but I actually chose The Intern with Anne Hathaway and Robert De Niro.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and part of the reason that I chose that was because of what both of the main characters go through. So for Anne Hathaway, she is a CEO who grew her business really quickly. And they're based at this, spoiler alert for all of this if you've not seen this movie.
Like 15 years old.
But everybody's trying to convince her to hire a CEO and essentially take a step back or take like a creative role or do something different within the business, because she basically doesn't know how to be a CEO of a larger corporation. She started in her living room kitchen, and so you watch her struggle throughout this. And I think when we're talking about realistic reality, that is such a good picture of what that looks like, because she is really struggling with, do I want this? How does that impact my family? How does it impact me personally?
Mhm.
How does it impact my relationship? All of these things. And at the end, she had hired a CEO. And I think before they even started, she said, no, I don't want to do this. And she stayed on and decided to really figure it out, but then create boundaries with herself and create some more balance between her career and her family and all of that. And I think that even if you're thinking about switching careers, going through that process to really go, is the job the problem, or am I the problem? Am I not setting boundaries? Am I not making time for this? Because a lot of times it does end up being us, and something that we've started to do. And so I love that process that she goes through. The other one is Robert De Niro. And the reason I love this is because what he's going through does not get talked about a lot. And it's called an encore career. So this is somebody who has had a career. They've done all their things. They're retired, and they retire. And then they're like, I don't like sitting here and doing
Yeah.
nothing. And they just don't know how to fill their time, and in some cases, the spouse passes away, something happens that makes them go, I want to do something different. And for him, he did this senior intern program. And so he's getting back into corporate basically, but it's very different than the corporate that he went through. And so you watch him really learn new things and learn new skills and learn how to speak and communicate, use technology, all of these things that are wildly different than what his first career was. And so that's what I love about this movie, is it shows people in different generations and how they're managing career transition, in different ages, basically.
Oh, yeah. Wow, that you made that sound way more interesting than what I remember it. I haven't watched it, but now I want to go
Still
watch
like a dramatic. There's still super inappropriate stuff in it, and a lot of like, probably grounds for sexual harassment lawsuits and things like that.
I know, but now I want to see it. I mean, people who I love sliding doors, and I'm like, I wonder if I can stream it because I haven't seen it recently on the DVD. But yeah, do you know about this?
I know about the movies, but I've never actually seen them.
Yeah, they so it's just one movie with Gwyneth Paltrow.
I thought
And
it was weren't there 2 movies?
oh, I don't
And there was like a 90s one and then like a 2000s one or something.
Oh, I don't remember that. I only know like the 2000s one. It wouldn't surprise me because,
I'm
why?
pretty sure there's an earlier one
Let's
and
see.
that's based off of.
Yeah, well, so she's in, as I look it up right now, because I'm like, that means I'm sliding doors. It was a movie. So it comes with the 98 one. That's the one with Gwyneth Paltrow. And that's the only
Who's
one
the
I'm
lead
seeing.
guy?
John Hannah and
Oh,
Peter Holt.
maybe I'm thinking of a different movie.
Oh wait,
very
is it
possible.
what is a Netflix version of Sliding Doors? Look Both Ways. That came out last year. But anyway.
Okay. But no, I have not seen it.
Again, real time. Here's what we're doing. It's like you're like at dinner, you're like, I'm gonna look this up right now. Yeah, so it's like she has to go and she's running late and she misses the train, and the movie follows the 2 paths, whether she misses the train and if she caught it. And if she missed the train, I think I can't remember if she was going home or not, but anyway, whichever one, she finds her boyfriend is having an affair, and that causes her to start a new career as an advertisement person. And the other one is that she doesn't catch him, so she's kind of continues her life and is miserable. I'm definitely gonna have to watch that. So and then I'm gonna have to look up this Look Both Ways thing because I didn't know that existed. But
Yeah.
let people know where they can find you.
Yeah. So my website is ridethetidecollective.com. That is where all of my resources are. I have a ton of free resources. I also have a podcast that you can listen to. And then all my different coaching and course options. I hang out primarily on LinkedIn. So if you're looking for me on social media, I am on all the platforms, but I primarily post and am active on LinkedIn. So feel free to connect with me there as well.
Do you have a course on LinkedIn?
Oh, I do. Oh, thanks.
I've heard of this course.
Yes, I do. So I have a course on LinkedIn Learning, and it's about what is it about? It's taking ownership. I was trying to remember the exact title of it. It's about taking ownership in your career. And honestly, for career transition, it's a really great base course for you to do a lot of different evaluation for yourself. So highly recommend it for those that are in a career or job transition space to help get through some of the things that we've talked about today. So
including the movies that we're discovering. Well, thank you so much for joining me and us in the future, because this is recorded. And it's ridethetide.com.
Ride the Tide Collective.
Ride the Tide Collective, one word, .com. ridethetide.collective.com. You can find her mostly on LinkedIn, but you can find her everywhere else. So be sure to check her out, and I'll see you guys next week. We'll see what happens. It's just the way things go. All right. Bye.